Oftentimes in life, when we find ourselves in situations or circumstances, too often we don't realize that there is an approach that we can take to make ourselves better. There are approaches that the community can take to make the whole community better. And it's particularly interesting when you consider the plight and the situation and or the status of the African American community. And I am one who try to look at myself first before I begin to criticize or analyze or complain, if you please, about my situation or my circumstances or the kind of condition that I'm in. Because after having lived a few years, and this ain't Clairol, I have learned that oftentimes there are resources available in the community that if I would just take the time to think about it and try to see what I can do to try to improve myself or improve my situation or improve the community. This is a call to action, and I'm your host, Alex Habersham. And I want to talk about some of those self help steps that I, as an individual, can take and that we as a community can take, particularly as it relates to economics and economic development and finances and jobs and businesses and things of that nature. I'm so happy and so privileged to have with me today an individual, a young man who kind of knows what he's talking about as it relates to steps that individuals and communities can take for self help and self improvement. Two comments. If it is to be, it's up to me. Second one, three. We can lift ourselves up by our own bootstraps. Third one, a rising tide raises the whole ship. So I would like to introduce to you and present to some Mr. Michael T. Hill. How you doing, Mike?
How you doing, Mr. Hammersham? Good to be with you today.
Good to have you with me. Tell us a little bit about yourself first, Mike.
Born in Athens, Georgia, grew up in Augusta, Georgia, and a product of Clark Atlanta University. Married me a cherry blossom peach from Macon. I want to give my wife a shout out, Dr. Melanie Hill. And so we just left Macon last week, and I understand you getting back from the Cherry Blossom Festival. So she was Miss Cherry Blossom. She never lets us forget she was Miss Cherry Blossom
All
back in
right.
the day.
All
And
right.
so that I think that's appropriate during Women's History Month that we recognize these women, Mr.
Absolutely.
Habersham. So just a little bit about me. I'm former CEO, founder, and president of the Atlanta Metropolitan Black Chamber. Started the Atlanta Black Chamber about 15 years ago in the Atlanta area. We grew that, just kind of transition, kind of heading up the foundation aspect of it. I spend a lot of my time these days mentoring chambers throughout the southern region. And in my company, my professional 9 to 5, I form and help form build capacity in nonprofits and businesses through forming public-private partnerships. So I'm very excited to talk to you about some of the great things that are coming down and really making our community aware of what they need to be paying attention to as this $1.9 trillion come down from the federal government. Happy to be here today.
I'm happy to have you. Talk about, if you would, some of the specific steps. I noticed in our conversation the other day, you talked about three times. One was business, one was community, and one was government. Although,
Absolutely.
is that correct? Okay, so talk about how all three of those things intertwine and how what you're doing help to uplift them and bring them together and familiarize the community how we as a community can utilize those three resources to kind of uplift the community. But before you do that, I was amazed at a statistic that you showed me the other day. And then I'm gonna plug one in that you may or may not know, and then you could just piggyback off of it. Macon has a 44% poverty rate, and so anything that we can do to kind of address and improve that scenario, that situation, we need to do it. But talk about the information that you have as it relates that shows the condition of the African American community, particularly from a wealth and income perspective.
Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up a slide. And this is a very shocking statistic that I think you were shocked by. And definitely I was shocked by. And this was a study done by Northwestern University. So I'm going to pull up this slide here, show you this, and don't fall out your chair. And it's very important. And it's the reality of our community, the Black community today. So what you was asking me about is that in this chart, what we see is the medium wealth amongst families with children. And so with three graphs that I want you to pay attention to, the graph in the blue, which is at the top, are white households. And in 2004, those white households earned over $50,000 in wealth. As we went through the recessionary periods of the 2009 and was going through the recovery, they recovered back. I mean, now, as of 2016 and beyond, the household incomes exceeded about $47,000. Now, the graph on the orange represents the Hispanic households. In 2004, Hispanic households was doing a little bit over $3,000 in wealth. As they progressed through the recessionary period, they had a decline, but they started to recover slightly and had a growing income of about $3,600 or so dollars. Now, the tragic part of this graph is the graph that you see in the gray. That represents Black household families' wealth. We did slightly better in 2004. At about 4,000 than Hispanic households. And as we went through the Great Recession, you will see that our wealth pretty much flatlined. It did not recover. It continued to stay very even on the line. And what you see is a net wealth of about $294.
Hold on. You trying to tell me that the average household wealth for a Black family is $294?
What that equates to on this next chart, to break it down. So if we looked at that from a dollar by dollar perspective, Black households are only about 1 cent compared to their white household counterparts. Hispanics, 8 cents. And if you broke that down from male to female and broke it down into a fraction, if you can make a fraction out of a penny, Black women are doing significantly worse. That is an alarming statistic that we need to begin focusing in on and changing that trajectory.
Now, for every dollar that a white household takes in, you're telling me that we take in it's a penny to the dollar?
A penny to the dollar.
Wow.
And the sad thing, I had an opportunity to participate. I don't know if you remember when Tavis Smiley used to the State of the Black Union years ago. And Tavis, of course, wrote the book that followed that. In there, it stated that if you looked at African Americans' net worth, the GDP would be less than 1% unchanged since the Civil War. And this is what we're seeing reflected in some of these economic policies, and also just the ups and downs that have occurred in terms of us going through pandemics, in terms of economic downturns and so forth. I label us as the historically disadvantaged. And we have to really pay attention to some of the policies that have really pervasively impacted us from gaining our wealth in our households.
Okay. Now, so you shown us how deep we are in the ditch. You know, the ditch is over our head. So now, how do we climb out of it?
Well, let's talk about that. So we do have hope. The $1.9 trillion relief bill that has been signed into law, that is currently coming down the pipeline, is one of the most traumatic and transformative pieces of legislation since the RDF days in the 30s and 45s. So if you think back about the New Deal, the GI Bill, and all the different bills that were created to really, and these were programs which transform wealth in American society, that is what this piece of legislation offers. Very different than most legislative packages. A lot of this money will be directed to come to middle income, working class, and low to moderate income households. People are receiving checks right now, Mr. Habersham. And you know, my mom called me the other day, y'all rich now, right? I said, well, yeah, we did get a little money.
Well, you got 3 kids, right?
I got 3 kids. I got 3, and I'm loving my 3 kids. So, but that's great. So you have a lot of single moms, you have a lot of middle class families that are really reaping the benefits, and it is something that will help out. But we have to make sure that we invest those dollars. Now, Georgia is slated to receive over $2.2 billion of this relief package, of that 1 trillion. And Macon, Georgia, you ask, what can we do? Macon, Georgia is scheduled to receive 77 million of that. Okay, and that's just going to the county. That's, and being consolidated government, you may get a little bit more, but that's what Macon, Georgia is looking at receiving. So when we talk about transformative wealth, and this is something that we talked about in our session on last evening, was that investing in small business is one of the best investments that we can make, because our small businesses create jobs immediately. So when we look at our most impoverished areas in our prospective cities, let's begin by investing in our businesses that can create jobs and opportunities for the communities that they serve. And one of the things that you emphasized on the program was to shop and buy local. So this chart right here shows the difference between shopping with a non-local business, which is on the left. So every $100 that we invest in that business, about basically 32 stays in that community, versus when we do invest in our local communities, about $57 stays in that community. So those are the things that, you know, can help change the trajectory of our communities. Now, you asked me, you said, okay, business community government. What that was about is that by supporting our businesses locally, helping them to increase revenues, they then can create jobs. It serves as a great tax base for the city. We can do economic development projects within the community to transfer those communities in little amount of time. Community means that we do have nonprofit organizations that we need to make sure to get these dollars. You have great community organizations who are doing grassroots work, who really haven't seen or received the love, you know, for some of these dollars that are coming down, but we need to get those dollars in them so they can build capacity and do bigger programs. But we also have to show our nonprofits that you're not for profit, you're a social enterprise. And then supporting those social enterprises where they can do even more work. And the government piece is that working collaboratively with our elected officials and our council people, and making sure that we're at the table and we're being innovative in the way that we implement regulations, and more importantly, implement these CARES Act dollars. What's different about these dollars, Mr. Habersham, is that it's for emergency and pandemic relief. Emergency funds. That means that these federal dollars can be used in innovative and flexible ways. So I can't think of any community in more of a state of emergency than what I just showed you on that first chart. 1 cent, the African American family.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about, if you allow me to interject here, because I think it needs to be made plain and clear. And I think we need to prick the conscientiousness of the African American community. Now, we're going to get that money. A lot of us are going to get that money. A lot of us are going to spend some of that money. I hope we save some. But talk about how we can utilize that money in our spending power and how we can be more conscientious about investing. I know you know the numbers, but in most communities, at least the dollar circulates, a few times before it goes out. And I don't remember the statistics, but it's almost like those $294. But in our community, Zoom,
Hours.
it's gone.
Hours.
Yeah,
Yes.
so within hours, okay. So talk about the significance of being more conscientious about, whenever possible, spending your money with African American businesses, and what would be the advantage of that to the entire community. Now, I wouldn't be a businessman if I didn't tell you, or if I didn't mention the fact that I've been publishing the Black Pages, Macon Middle Georgia Black Pages, for right at 30 years. And that is a resource. That is a resource. And it's free, to go to that publication or go to the website, create that conscientiousness, and decide that you're going to spend some of that money in your own community.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that last chart. I mean, businesses tend to hire people within their community. I mean, that's the logical transition. And in terms of the influx of monies that this community is going to get, and one of the things that they know is that we are great consumers. We consume in the trillions of dollars. So if you can think about that and you direct that, and I have this other presentation where I kind of break down, well, what do we spend trillions of dollars on? And we broke that down into the 25 market sectors. And when we broke those market sectors down, Mr. Habersham, we said, okay, we spent about $125 billion in housing. Okay, we're spending about over $10 billion in hair and beauty. Okay, so from a business point of view, and I said, wait a minute, these are people that look like me spending all this money in the billions. And if I put my economics hat on and I said, well, what's 1% of a billion? Well, that's 10 million. So if I capture 1% of market share, then I could do a whole bunch. I hadn't talked about federal contracts and state. I'm just saying supporting businesses. So these individuals who are now having an influx of money, definitely invest in your community. Invest in your community. And our businesses need to organize themselves to invest not only in their communities, but in those nonprofits. Because what nonprofits are looking for, what? Corporate dollars, right? Small businesses can do the exact same thing to support those nonprofits. So it's that whole synergy that could be really creating that true village that we always talk about. Our faith-based communities. Macon is known to have the largest concentration of African-American churches in the nation. Now imagine we take those dollars and we bring, and we spoke about this, bring a community financial institution in there, a CDFI. Working with the businesses, working with the nonprofits, we can build a lot of capacity. Now let's bring a credit union, put it in East Macon somewhere. We can transform things overnight. So those are financial institutions that are directed towards the treasury. So as we look at this $1 trillion that's coming down, And as we engage with our elected officials that we put into office, and Georgia brought it home towards the election, the return on investment, you guys, is to ask and make sure that these dollars are directed to the historically underserved community. That's not racism, that's not racist. It's just the state of what things are. We have been historically left out since the transition of the Reconstruction period to every economic set aside, and even in the Obama administration with the stimulus. We received less than 3% of the stimulus recovery dollars, and African American businesses received less than 1%. And you saw on that graph, we flatlined, and we're still flatlined. So I just urge us, please, let's get together. Let's get with the Black pages. Let's get with organizations and groups that are already, they've been doing the work. It's just time to collaborate and really position those dollars towards investment and not consumption.
That is absolutely true. So now let's talk a little bit about small business. Let's talk about the businesses. And, I've got 1,600 listed. I give every African American business a free listing in the Black pages.
Great
So
job.
let's talk about what we as small business people can do, how we can take advantage of these dollars, what kind of logistics, what kind of gyrations, what kind of information, what kind of resources, I've based on our call, with the Organization of Small and Minority Business, that we were on a Facebook Live call the other day about supporting local and minority businesses. I got a few inquiries, and then we may have to work on this later, but they want to know specifically where can they get the information, what are the qualifications, what can they do, to be a part of the process.
Well, of course, we have to complete the process. And I'm going to share a project that we did in the Athens Clark area. I was working with the Northeast Georgia Black Chamber of Commerce in the Athens area. And I was very proud. That's my hometown. And Commissioner Ovita Thornton and Commissioner Hannity were the two that led the charge, the dynamic duo, so to speak. And what they did was they wanted and saw a tradition of when dollars and resources come down from the federal government, it's typically going to the same groups and organizations, and they typically allocated the same way. So what they wanted to do was, let's be innovative. Let's look at exactly what I'm talking about. The unsung heroes, the organizations who've been working with bootstrap budgets. And let's see what happens if we give them a little money. Can they effectively get these dollars out to the community? And I was proud to say that they did select the Northeast Georgia Black Chamber of Commerce as one of those organizations in which they received $500,000. We got $500,000 out in about 6 weeks and impacted 135 businesses. It was beautiful. But we didn't just give the money out, because we recognized from a cultural point of view, these were businesses who didn't even try to apply for the PPP loan. And because we know our community and we know how we kind of perceive things and how we approach things, we knew that our community needed technical assistance. They needed help. And so what we said, instead of what traditional program says, that you got to have these requirements before you participate, we said you got to have these requirements and we're going to help you complete them, and we're going to give you some money after you do. And that's what we did different. And as a result of doing that, they now have an attorney, a CPA, a lawyer, HR professional, and marketing professional that we subsidized into the actual program that's going to work and continue to work with them for 6 months. And now the city benefited from it because now they have an increased tax base from these businesses. Second phase is to do the exact same thing for our nonprofits. So those are things that we hope that the Macon community, Macon Bibb community can look forward to as you and I move forward with our conversations with the powers that be.
That's so very outstanding. Well, let me promise you that we're not gonna we're not gonna fumble the ball and we're not gonna drop the ball. So I'm advising everyone to stay tuned. Subscribe to our mailing list with the Black Pages. You can go to makingblackpages.com and subscribe to our list, because what we're going to do, we're going to be sending out information. We're going to be garnering individuals who are interested in forming some kind of code. We're going to do this. We're going to do. I want to give a shout out to Sharice, because she implemented that seminar, where we had a lot of good discussions about not only what Michael T. Hill, that's who that guy is on the screen, not only what he can do, but there were other resource individuals, on the webinar, the Small Business Development Center, the Regional Commission, and the Bibb County Economic and Community Development Organization. So I really want to advise everybody that there are resources available, there's help available, and there are things that we can do. When we get that influx of money, I want us to be conscientious. Go to the Black Pages or wherever and say, well, now how can I fill this economic need or this product or service need that I have with a reputable African American business, which everybody will benefit as a result of doing that. So if in fact you want to learn more, I'm learning too. But as Michael and I get together and try to put together a strategy to try to bring this project to fruition in Macon Bibb, then we're going to invite everybody. We'll have another forum or live seminar or something. But we're going to do this, and we're going to need your support of the nonprofits, of the elected officials, of the faith-based community, and of the business community, everybody. But we're going to make a measurable difference in our community. And the way to do that is by becoming more self-sufficient, which we can do because we have got the resources and the finances. Thank you, man, for all you do. I wish you Godspeed in all your effort, and you'll
Thank
be
you for your support.
Yes, sir. You'll be hearing from Alex and Michael real soon. Y'all have a great day.